favourite noise is the noise of the world. Sound of nature. And if I have to shrink it down to one of the 4 elements, I'd probably say water. Partly because it's so challenging to record it, and so challenging to effectively bring the sound of water out of a sound reproducing system. I remember sitting on the beach, with headphones on of course, with the microphone on input, listening to the sound of the waves, only louder. I enjoy complex sounds, and I find simple sounds very irritating. When I say complex sound, I mean something with a dynamic range, something that has loud and quiet in it, and I mean something with varying frequencies in it. Stupid, dumb robot computer noises like sting, a bit boring. Although the way that I perform them, of course, is they're full of harmonic richness. Bringing complexity, timbrally, and dynamic range to a small device is super challenging, obviously. And I guess we're just at the beginning of making this work really well. We know from our great-grandparents that it's possible to have a deeply meaningful emotional experience listening to essentially a crappy sound reproducing device. Nevertheless, our great-grandparents enjoyed profound musical experiences because what was delivered to the sound source was great art and wonderful musical performances. With modern phones and tiny speakers, we've really got a long way to go. But it seems to me that if we use timbrally rich sound with quite a lot of dynamic, we have a chance of emotionally connecting with people, no matter how primitive and inadequate the sound reproducing device is. In the last 10 or 15 years, inside the sound entertainment industry, we've got caught up in a loudness war where everyone is trying to make everything as loud as possible. It's obviously really easy to irritate people. You make a sound containing energy right in the middle of the frequency band of the small speaker, and you make it as loud as possible, and you blast it out of the small speaker like a hailstone. That's interesting for about 3 seconds. After that, everyone switches off. We can't rely on the engineers to come up with small speakers that have incredible dynamic range and incredible frequency response. So we have to deliver the right sound to the speakers that we've got right now. The human mind and the human ear has a huge capacity to recreate in itself a musical experience so that it is possible to play a kick drum through a laptop speaker or through a small phone speaker, and people will move their body to it because they know what's implied, which is the same experience, I think, that our great-grandparents had. One of the great ways of learning about effectively bringing feelings through a sound reproduction device is just to listen to what you yourself are doing and what other people are doing with the same device, and constantly tweak your work in order to try and maximize the emotional connection between the application and the user. Because once we can establish an emotional bond between application and user, we're in.
Sound brings that fourth dimension to it, which is gives the characters weight, gives them size and dimension and things like that.
My approach to most mixing sound for film is I look at the big screen all the time. That's the story. That's the thing we're telling. Every shot, every camera pushing, there's a reason behind it. Whether it just feels right, it's emotionally correct, But whatever it is, there's a reason why they're doing that.
I just think film, too, is so exciting. And Peter, he's just bringing to the audience something fresh and new. And it's just, it's the kind of stuff we go to movies for.
We live in a fantastic place. We look at New Zealand and the scenery, the beauty that we have here, and we feel a part of Middle Earth. And with Peter, we sort of growing into Lord of the Rings, and now Hobbit takes it to the next level.
I really loved the way Pete has introduced the movie again. The music at that point, I actually am taking the music, and it's actually, if you listen closely, and I shouldn't reveal this, but I am, there is nothing in the surrounds. It almost comes all forward. And then when they cut to Bilbo, the music swells, and he comes up off the rock. It says 12 months later. The music actually swells up and whips around, fills out the entire room. And I'm doing that to just give this, whoa, here we go. Now the adventure is continuing.
You had orders to kill them. Why? What is Thorin Oakenshield to you?
The dwarf runt will never be king.
King? There is no king under the mountain, nor will there ever be. None would dare enter Erebor whilst the dragon lives.
You know nothing. Your world will burn.
Lord of the Rings is Middle Earth, and so the atmospheres and each scene has to kind of relate to the book and to what those areas are.
Dealing with any sound, for any movie, you've got to get into the character, you've got to get into the story. Hobbit is just like any other film. You're creating a soundtrack, you're creating a feeling, emotion, and driving and telling a story. So number one, dialogue's got to play. Dialogue has to be heard. Emotion comes from the music and the silences and the space that we can allow it with the sound effects coming down.
The interesting thing about film, too, is it provided us with new environments that we haven't really been to before. And then, one of the really cool environments, which I think Pete really appreciated from a sound effects point of view, was inside Erebor, just the halls of Erebor, and these massive marble hallways that seemingly go on forever. And just the sound of the air there was important to sell. And to also sell, how quiet a place it can be and how loud a place it can be when obviously Smaug awakens. The Smaug is all about Benedict Cumberbatch's voice, but in addition to that, he is a creature. He is a growling, rumbling, fire-breathing dragon, and so I would handle sort of the growls and the bellows and the rumbles and the fire breathing, and Mike Hedges would handle the dialogue, and I just had to make sure that I never stepped on him. So it's kind of like as if the dialogue, as if the voice would recede, the growls would come out of it and sort of interleaved in between the dialogue in such a way that they complemented each other but never stepped on each other.
Thief. Where are you? Come now. Don't be shy. Step into the light.
Making the dialogue not just audible but comfortably audible is job number one. And, when the music needs to do its job, my world, sound effects, need to get out of the way and let it do that and let it breathe.
What elements are giving the best emotional response that the director's looking for? What is enhancing versus what is taking away from the moment? And it can be the music, will be the dominant thing, or the effects, or it can be a give and take, at any given moment.
Pete's great with cameras slowly tracking in, or little eye movements, or facial expressions, and so sometimes Howard writes with those kind of things in mind, looking at the picture, and sometimes they get lost. And so I try to get real familiar with the track and try to understand what it's doing. And there might be something that's, the cellos are playing a little motif here that now is getting lost. So I'll try to, boost those up.
Peter and I work very closely together. It's a week by week, day by day kind of process. And we just work. We've done a lot of work on the trilogy, obviously. This is really our fifth film that we've done on Tolkien's work. So we have a good working back and forth.
One of the things that I do in the effects world is I try to wrap the audience up in an environment. but it's a very subtle thing because too much of that environment and suddenly you're encroaching on the comfortable sort of juxtaposition of the spoken word based on the wind or the ambient sound and or music. Atmos definitely brings in new possibilities for us to do more dynamic and interesting things with sound. For a mixer, Atmos is yet a new challenge, and a good one. I mean, one I think we utilize well in Hobbit Film 2, and obviously, you know, more sonic options for us to do cool things that help tell stories better.
The spider's going over the top of you, you know, there's a couple shots where it goes right over the top of Bilbo. And so in Atmos, you can literally do that. And Chris Boyes literally, you know, they take the sound and they go right over the top of you. It makes it a little bit more creepier for me, it does. And I don't know, audience members will be the judge of that.
I think in the past we were always thinking about the ability to do that, but we couldn't do it because the system couldn't do it. And I think that's one of the reasons why they designed the system the way they did, is because people were asking for the ability to pan something straight overhead and not go in the sides, or to, you know, to move something the way you are able to do it now.
Especially in this film, you're going from one environment to the next environment. Atmos especially is really important. It's incredibly important. It's got to add to that sense of reality. It's, you know, it is immersive, I think.
Now in Atmos, you have the front, middle, back, and you have the entire ceiling in an object sense that while it's not, it can be all of the ceiling or it can just be points on the ceiling almost as if they're stars. And so, yeah, more complicated, more challenging, and obviously, you know, more sonic options for us to do cool things that help tell stories better.
A lot of what you can do in the sound has to do with how you've constructed the picture. That if you don't allow time for the sound to move and propagate around the room, it doesn't matter.
It's a bit of a family sort of feel, the team that work with any of Peter's films. Peter loves to work with the crews that he knows and trusts, and I think it's a two-way street. We have a great respect for his ability as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, and we look at Philippa Boyens and we look at Fran Walsh and Peter, and the team spirit that they provide is encouraging and takes us to a whole new level.
And one of the things that I love mixing for Pete that he allows us to do is to really create a sonic dynamic that can get very intense and very aggressive, and then very simple and very quiet. And for me as a mixer, it's a big challenge, but it's a lot of fun.